The home is much more than just tile, cabinetry, and drywall. I mean, it is a feeling. It should be felt. It should be experienced. It is where our clients relax at the end of the day. It's where they're going to create family memories. And so to be part of that process, first of all, is an honor as a designer to be entrusted with that. But also, it's more than just the things. It's a feeling. And that takes careful balance. In the design world, we're constantly looking at balance.
Welcome to episode 96 of the AFT Construction Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Leavitt. And in this episode, I speak with Alisha Taylor from Alisha Taylor Interiors. And Alisha is an incredible designer here local, here in Scottsdale. In fact, we have a couple of projects together. And this conversation was super important. We spoke about that team collaboration, that team approach. But even more so, understanding the ideal client. Why are they ideal? What makes it a successful project? You know, setting those parameters. How does she work through that design process? Even to the extent of where do you go on vacation? You know, where do you travel and how do you incorporate that into the design itself? We spoke about just the process and how do you educate the client. Most of this comes down to education. There's nothing more expensive than a cheap bid, a cheap proposal. And then how are you dealing with the complexity of business, from marketing to psychology to management, and then dealing with long lead times. A lot of information. There's a lot of knowledge that Alisha shared with us. So without further ado, let's get started. So welcome to the AFT Construction Podcast. I'm Brad Leavitt, and today we have with us Alisha Taylor. Welcome, Alisha.
Thank you for having me.
And Alisha is founder and owner of Alisha Taylor Interiors, and she is here local in Phoenix, although she's working everywhere, even out of the country.
Yep.
In addition to that, we have a few projects together, and right now it's an interesting time. I know Alisha and I have really tried to figure out this market because right now with inflation and costs, you know, even though you and I worked really well in pre-construction, there's so much we're dealing with. So what's your biggest challenge right now?
Really, our biggest challenge, because our local market is bananas right now, is sometimes just saying no to a potential client and weeding out and educating the clients. The market is crazy right now. Prices are changing. The perfect client and an ideal client understands that there's no set number sometimes when we get started. And they're hiring a team, not a number or a bid. And so that has been a challenge because there isn't any set rules anymore because things are, you know, so busy.
So it's interesting because I know with your clientele, you're probably going to get a little bit of both. You have some clients that are going to rely on you, Alisha, and say, okay, Alisha, put together the team. We need a good architect. We need a good builder. We need a good landscape architect. But you're going to have some, I'm sure, that say, okay, Alisha, well, we want you to design it. Then we want to get 3 bids or 4 bids. Like, how do you navigate just that conversation or education, if you will, to the client?
I was going to say, that's exactly what it is education. We really try to be upfront, honest, transparent with our clients, whether it's how we design or how we charge, but also what the industry looks like. We do this day in and day out, and they don't. And so they're coming to us. And so whether we're already, you know, we're part of a great established team, that's ideal. But if they're coming to us looking for that right builder or they keep talking about bids, we're not afraid to kind of pump the brakes on that conversation and educate them about trust and reputation in the industry, and that a bid may work against you, where you hire a great trusted builder and a trusted architect. They are hired to work for you, you know, and be upfront about your budget. Be honest. We're all here to make the most beautiful house for you and to fit what you want and to meet your expectations. You don't want to have anyone working against you throughout that process.
I love that you shared it that way, at least that perspective. So if I'm the client, Alisha, and I'm coming to you and I'm like, okay, Alisha, I want you to design this amazing house. We have this great architect. We want to send out for bid, the best price. So how would you just handle that conversation? And my expectation is I'm pushing my understanding of the industry and you're saying, well, bids can work against you. What does that mean?
And it's tricky. I mean, at the end of the day, it's our client's house and it's their wallet. And we do respect that. So first of all, it's education. And then second is if they're just adamant that that's the path that they want to go down, then we really have to do some deep dives ourselves, because we rely on our contractors for some of that budget conversation. What are the expectations? How much have you put into the budget? What are our allowances? Where if we don't have that from the get-go, it'd be really easy as a designer just to, design anything we want. And so it just forces us to do a deeper dive into what their expectations are. Sometimes we say, okay, are you, can you afford the Honda or the Mercedes, or do you want an Aston Martin? Like, where do we even take this project? And throwing out realistic numbers for them. Are you prepared for $400 a square foot? Are you thinking more $600 a square foot? Show us a home that you love, and I can look at it pretty quick and know what budget, are they wanting a $10 million house for $2 million? Or are they realistic? And so a lot of that is just managing expectations from the very, very get-go, whether there ideally is a great team, or at the end of the day, we're kind of there to help them through that whole process to the end.
Yeah, there's a lot asked of a designer. I think most people don't realize, especially involved in the beginning, because they rely on you for your advice, for not only your aesthetic and the design of the house, but also the coordination with the architect, with the budget, with the contractor, finding trades to execute your design. But it's interesting you brought up the bid against you, because I think about it this way as a builder. So it's very complicated to bid a project, right? To bid a custom home, to diagnose and make sure that we have everything in Alisha's spec book. We have everything from the architect that is bid out, because there's a lot of different options and products from different suppliers, different installers. And it's even more complicated. Let's just take something simple that's not simple as concrete. If we're working on a hillside build that you and I have, my team will get 3 concrete bids. But even though we get 3 bids, all 3 are totally different. They're including different things. They're excluding different things. Their interpretation of the plans are different. And so we have to be extremely experienced. We have to understand the numbers to a T, right? As we're doing Bluebeam and we're doing estimates and quantity takeoffs. So that way we know that we're not missing footings or certain scopes that we actually need, because that is a change order to us or the client later, and it really creates a bad relationship. And so I always think about it this way. If you're the client and you're trying to get 3 bids, okay, it's difficult enough with concrete, right? But now you take 100 people working on it. How do you know the interpretation that the builder has the right spec of cabinetry that Alisha wants? The right type of hardware that what's the quality? I mean, there's so many variables. And that's why, as you mentioned, if you have the right team, if you have a contractor you trust, and the benefit of you, Alisha, having worked as a designer for so many years and so many connections, that you can really point your clients in the right direction to say, yeah, this is the right person. I know how they communicate. I know their process, where it's going to be a fair and ethical and cost-effective build for you.
Yeah. And it still comes down to education. But I like to use the analogy with my clients, like, hey, you're going to go on a family vacation, or you're going to design a family vacation, maybe for a different family. And there's no parameters put to it. Is it a safari in Africa? Is it a relaxing beach vacation, staying at a cheap hotel? And so when there are no parameters, when there's too many unknowns, going out and getting a bid will never be apples to apples, ever. And that's where we educate them. And that's where the bid can work against you, because now you've got a builder who knows that. They've been in the industry. They do this day in and day out. And the lowest bid, unfortunately, gets the most attention to our clients, of course.
They see that number and it's hard to move from it.
Yes. But without that understanding of what it's missing or what it doesn't include, unfortunately, we've had clients go down that road where they went out to bid, went with the cheapest builder, and then at the end, year and a half, 2 years later, come back to us and say, gosh, you were right. We ended up spending the exact same amount of money, or sometimes more, than that builder who bid really high, because he included everything. And that just breaks my heart, because all the stress, all that managing expectations, it's a lot of work. And so we are, from the get-go, just have those honest, candid conversations. And I've used you to our benefit in the fact that, hey, just meet with a builder. You don't have to hire him, but it's another layer of education. It's someone else coming in and explaining it from a business, standpoint. Because our clients are successful, they're usually very, very business savvy. And so once you associate it outside of a bid and you go into those business, hey, here's the business and the reputation and the quality, you kind of quit talking about the dollar signs for just a minute. And we're not going to ignore those. We're going to work with your budget, but let's get the right team in place first.
I love that analogy you gave. I mean, the reality is there's nothing more expensive than a cheap bid, right? Like, we know I've paid that price myself, but the parameter side, I always use the analogy when people say, Brad, how much does it cost to build a house? I always say, well, what does it cost for a bag of groceries, right? And I've said it here on the podcast before, but the parameter, I never thought about the travel analogy where it's like, okay, design me a vacation. Okay, are we going to Cape Cod? Are we going to Bora Bora? Are we going to African safari? I mean, they're so distinct and different in cost and activity. I mean, you think of all the complexity there in that, and then now apply it to a house. And so how are you building those parameters? Because I'm sure a lot of clients will come in and say, you know what, Alisha, I love mid-century modern, or, I love a modern contemporary house, but then they show you pictures and you're like, that's not anything what we're talking about here. So how do you take their inspiration, images, ideas, and then kind of cultivate that into the correct parameters so you have at least a good base as far as design is considered?
Right. Well, and it's easy to take a client's words and vocabulary at face value because I got a design degree. We've got 4 members of our team with design degrees. Mid-century modern means something to us as an educated 4-year degree, designer. To them,
yeah, something on Pinterest.
Exactly.
Right?
And so we try to ask them different type of questions. What style are you? What style do you want this home? Doesn't usually get us very far. But where do you like to vacation? What does your closet look like? What inspires you? What's the most favorite resort you've been to? And we literally Google it and get right on, and pull it up if we need to. Yet, and we do have them pin pictures. Whether they give us 5 or 500, we tell them we will take anything that you can give us, because aesthetically and visually, it starts to tell a story that they're not very good at verbalizing. But we as designers are trained to see it, pull it out of them, and understand, their lifestyle. We've had clients come to us say, oh, I want contemporary. But then when I look at who they are and I realize, I'm like, no, you want something a little softer than that, because you still want this cozy, and this picture isn't matching what, your life. And we talk about it and work through those. And 99% of the time we're nailing it, just because, and they're like, whoa, almost surprised that we pulled it out of them in a way that now can translate to a design. And sometimes they have no idea that we've pulled it out of them. Yeah,
well, I think it comes down to the questions. Is that when you say just pull it out of them, it's not like you're just creating magic out of nothing, right? You're actually, there's a target, there's a mentality here where one of the questions you mentioned, you'll say, where do you vacation, right? What resort do you stay at? And I love that, because I will say the best designers I've worked with, including yourself, they always implement something about their travel into their house. So for example, maybe they stayed at some amazing hotel in Paris and they had these antique mirror doors that open up into the suite, and then they put that in their master bedroom. And so you see these little elements where people travel and they have these memories and they put it into their house. But it does give you a good feel, because people that travel and have been in different cultures, right, there is an aesthetic they're looking for because it makes them feel that way. That's why they travel. That's why they return to that location over and over. So if you bring that into their house, well, that's why I'm sure the clients like you nailed it without them really even understanding how you did so.
Yeah. Well, they think they just had a fun conversation with their designer, getting to know each other. And, we're meticulously taking notes and really understanding how they live and what they want. Because a home is much more than just tile, cabinetry, and drywall. I mean, it is a feeling. It should be felt. It should be experienced. It is where our clients relax at the end of the day. It's where they're going to create family memories. And so to be part of that process, first of all, is an honor as a designer to be entrusted with that. But also, it's more than just the things. It's a feeling. And And that takes careful balance. In the design world, we're constantly looking at balance. We create all of our designs in 3D, even if our clients don't see all of those aspects. We definitely show them 3D renderings. But I'm walking through the space in 3D, looking for things. How is it? Yeah, how is color balanced? How is texture balanced? How is scale? Do we have way too high of a ceiling? Here in Arizona, we have the whole desert. And so sometimes getting human scale, getting some of these plans down to something more comfortable is a trick. So we want to know how they live and how they want to feel. And a lot of times that is, yes, there's tile that matches that. Yes, there's texture and, beautiful faucets that go into that. But it's scale and architecture and ceiling treatments and blocking out, contrasting darks, highs, lows. So there's and sometimes they have no idea. They see that beautiful home at the end of our project. But there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot that our team and our staff work hard, with all the tools to do.
And there's no doubt, you touched upon this, that when most people walk through a beautiful house that's furnished, they'll think it speaks to them. They'll see a picture on Pinterest or Instagram, but they don't know why, right? They don't understand what it is. They may say it's white cabinetry that they're drawn to, but they don't see all the other elements and the furnishings and the accents and, maybe a mix of rustic with modern and transitional, right? And so they're not seeing these things. And I love how you brought up how you feel, because for me, like, we've never done a project without a designer, at least in the last few years. And we won't do that. And it was, when I had this conversation with clients before COVID, there were still times where it's a little bit of an arm wrestle, right? Where they're like, Brad, I kind of know what I like. I don't really need a designer. And I'm like, no, you have to have a designer. And here's why, right? First off, it's going to make the process better. You're going to like me more by the end. Number two, it's, the resale is going to be better. The comfortability is better, right? How everything flows, and you're going to be happier with the build. But feel is something that people never really understood. At least not until COVID, because COVID, people are locked in their homes and now they're stuck and they're quarantining. And so were they inspired in their home? Did they have rooms that they were attracted to, they wanted to be in, that gave them energy, that gave their kids energy as they're working home from school? How was the yard? How was that flow? How was the kitchen, right? As you're there all the time. And that's where people don't realize that. Why not invest in that for the mentality and how you feel? Because there is true value there. And the designer is really going to nail that by hiring the right designer.
Oh, completely. And it wasn't, after a couple weeks of shutdown, our phone was ringing off the hook.
People are like, I'm not traveling. I need to fix my house.
Exactly. All of a sudden, homes became a priority, which we were ecstatic. Finally, we're talking the same language as our clients. And there's those aha moments that a lot of people had. And a lot of people have started new projects since COVID, realizing that, hey, this home I'm currently in is not a reflection of who I am or what I want to be or how I want to feel. And that has stemmed a lot of new build projects, some that we're working on together, and even extensive remodels or just a refresh. But the public now, I think, has definitely understood homes the way that you and I have understood them the entire time and wanted them to be seen. But it's now we've got our clients on board, which is exciting.
It is, because think homes before COVID, really, it was you go there and you sleep, right? You're out working, you're out traveling, you're out doing whatever. And then now it became, no, we reside here. Like, we live here. This is real life. We have to make this right. So through your process that you mentioned, Alisha, I think what's unique is you also do hand sketches.
Yeah.
Which is an artistry part of the design process, which I know a couple architects that do that. To some scale, not the entire house, but some elements. And you do not the whole house. You'll pick a kitchen and some feature areas. So the renderings, computer automation, you can go through 3D. What is the value and why do you do the hand sketch?
So what we have realized is getting our clients to visualize our design is probably takes more work than just the actual design itself. But without that visualization tool, they can't commit to it. And so it is key. We start all of our projects in SketchUp in a 3D program and walk through them and see the space. We then pick a view to show the client that really can, put that design on paper. The problem that we've had with computer, as cool as some of the gadgets are, is it's still a little cold. It doesn't give that warm feeling that a true home does in real life. And so we have a hand rendering artist. We now have two. And because it's become so integral in our processes. But that hand sketching, it starts in with the computer program. So it actually starts in SketchUp, but it's the light fixtures, it's the pillows, it's the texture that the hand rendering allows that real life layer to be put in so our clients can truly visualize a home as is experienced. And CAD and 2D drawings in CAD are great for the builder. It's great for the cabinet shop. But there's this softer element that we want our clients to see the project as a home, not a house, their home. And that hand sketch is just an easy way for us to give them that warmth and give them a little bit more of that real life feel in an easy way. Because we, with our systems and processes, like it goes pretty quick. We can accomplish those in just a couple hours in-house. And so without going to crazy photorealistic rendering softwares and hours, going down other roads, we can quickly show them something and get their commitment and get them on board. And then one of our new tools lately is photorealistic rendering. Mm-hmm. And so depending on the project and the client, we are adding that additional layer too, because again, visualization is everything. Because they're looking at a piece of dirt most of the time, right?
Yeah, and a 2D drawing, they're like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Like the biggest thing when we're sitting in design meetings, a client will even say, well, this bedroom is, 15 by 17 feet. Okay, what does that mean? Like, how big is that? Yeah. They have to actually walk into a house and see a 15 by 17 foot room to understand the scale, right? With the 10 foot or 12 foot lid, ceiling. So the visualization is key because most clients, even if they've built a house, a lot of them can't see that because this isn't what they do every day. And to make things go from 2D to 3D is very difficult. And I will say, and when we do our press release, we're going to have to post one of your sketches because I do agree. When you do that, Alicia, like there is a feel, as you mentioned, you're creating a home for mm-hmm. your client. And the reality is that drawing just gives a lot more life to what you're doing, right? Because they see the art and time that it took you, but also the texture and the layers that you mentioned that you just don't get in other scenarios. And I know that's what gravitates them. So when you're meeting with the client, we understand you have the visualization, you're doing the 3D, you're doing the colored renderings, you're doing the hand sketches. How does that process start? Like you have, and we talked about the first phase. The first phase, they come in and say, okay, Alicia, this is our style. Here's our Pinterest pictures. Here's where we travel. Here's the resorts we like to stay at. Now it's okay, we have a good idea of what you want in your design. What's phase two? Do you start with a certain area of the home? Is it a certain just product line, like cabinetry everywhere? How does that go?
So we present to our clients the way you see a room. So instead of dragging them to a tile showroom and picking all the tile or picking all the cabinetry first, we design an entire room. So the first time that they see a space, they're seeing every detail, every tile down to the cabinet hardware, down to that backsplash, the countertop, the cabinet finish, et cetera. And we always start with the kitchen. The kitchen is what usually in-house takes us the most time. It's the most important space. It's where the most money is spent, the most time a client spends, and it sets the tone for the entire house. So we want to make sure right out of the gate that we are getting the design exactly the way they want it and setting the tone for the whole house. And the kitchen's the best place. So that first presentation with us, you'll see a 3D rendering of the kitchen, samples on the table, material samples, tile backsplash, all the way down to the little cabinetry knob and finish, and all the materials and finishes in between that it takes to get there. Because, our clients, they look at a tile and say, okay, what is this? But when you put it in a whole story, when you put it into an entire design, that's where they start understanding the whole concept. And when they see all of that put together, it most of the time they just commit. They're like, hey, this is great. Keep going. And that's that's when we just light up in the office and, kind of get that little payoff.
Now, we're super excited to welcome one of our new sponsors to the podcast, Pella Windows. And this is even more exciting because we use Pella in so many of our projects, nearly all of them. And they've been just an incredible partner of ours. And locally, Sammy and Adam, they are not only amazing business partners behind us, but they are super close friends. And I speak on the podcast all the time about the importance of relationships, right? Relationships with our customers, with our vendors, with our suppliers. Because at the end of the day, I'm only as good as those that help our brand and assist us in our projects to take it from the ground up all the way to completion. And if we didn't have partners such as Pella, there's no way we'd be who we are today. Over the years, we've built this amazing relationship. When we call them or email them, they respond. They're quick. Their company culture, their integrity, their honesty, they are always there to do what's right for us and the customer. They can do anything from small replacement projects to large custom homes and even multi-million-dollar commercial projects. And also, when you think about their product line, they can do ultra contemporary, historical preservation, and large traditional projects. So for anyone, any scale, any size, they're the ones to call. They're here local. They have an amazing Instagram. Make sure and give them a follow to see what they're doing. So if you need windows and doors, give Sammy and Adam a call. We stand behind Pella. We love what they do, their culture, their brand, and especially their quality. And if you want to learn more about Pella Windows, check our show notes. We'll have everything tagged there so you can give them a follow and have their contact information to reach out. And now let's get back into the episode. So how do you manage, because this is the really complicated part, is as we're alluding to budget. In a perfect world, you have a client that has a contractor on board, an architect, and you're kind of working cohesively. So as you're going into kitchen design, you have a good idea of that budget for the kitchen itself. Mm-hmm. Now, when you don't have that scenario and the client wants to bid it out, like how are you managing the complexity of, we want to spend X dollars on the total house build, and now you're just designing the kitchen. So how do you navigate that portion?
Yeah. A lot of it is trying to get with them and letting them know that we're going to design to the abilities. If you've got a builder on board, that's great. We're going to sit down with your builder, see who we're going to use. We can tap into the actual cabinet company, get samples. Without that, there is an element where my hands are tied a little bit because I have to design a kitchen that any cabinet shop can accomplish. And I'm honest with them from the very beginning. And that sometimes goes into that conversation back at the beginning of, hey, let's get a good contractor on board here as part of the team. Because we have to design for a successful project. And if we have too many unknowns, then it doesn't allow us to be as creative or just, to really tap into the skills and the strengths of various talent around town with subcontractors and cabinet companies and installers. And so we're just really honest about that. And I like to say we can still do a beautiful kitchen for them. It's just we have to know that way up front. And again, just working and educating the client.
That's a really important aspect. And you said a key word there. You said, I have to design something that every cabinet shop can build. And that's really important, I think, for anyone listening, because as you're thinking about the designer process for you, Alisha, and you mentioned creativity. Creativity doesn't just mean it's going to be more expensive. Hiring a designer does not mean it's going to be more expensive, which a lot of people think that. But the value of a designer is, working with a dedicated cabinet company like you have, mm-hmm. I know you work well with Burdett, for example. Mm-hmm. And so that relationship, that teamwork where you can design something they can execute. So there's going to be less hours involved for both parties, right? That they can hit certain details at a cost-effective number. And so that's going to be different how you're coming into play with the design, right? Especially as they're providing samples and, for the client to sign off on. Whereas if you have to design something that, who knows, they're going to bid it out with 5 different cabinet companies, you don't even know the qualification. It's very vague, right? There's a lot of guessing that you have to do in that whole creative design.
Exactly.
Or limitations too.
And that's the bummer part of our job, but hopefully we can overcome that with just some education and get that client on board. Or we've had conversations with clients, even if they don't know who the builder's going to be, and they say, no, but I really do want that amazing kitchen, and I don't want you to hold back. Well, now at least they're educated that when they do hire that builder, there's going to be certain cabinet shops that can accomplish that and others that can't. And we've been around Scottsdale for a long time. We know them all. And we can help guide them like, hey, these are 3 cabinet shops. See which one your future builder, whoever you hire, has a good relationship with. But we know these guys can do what we've designed. And so every once in a while that happens, and it's just more about educating and making sure. So now they're going to go into a bid with the builder knowing, hey, this is what we're going to need from the get-go out of, let's say, our cabinetry. Or we really, really like beautiful natural stone. And so the installer that you use is going to have to be very equipped and accustomed to, working with marble or working with, heavy, big natural stones pieces.
So outside of the kitchen, as you've worked through that design process, what's your next favorite area of the home?
Master bath.
Yeah, the master bath.
Yes, master bath. Master bathrooms have become a retreat, our kind of in-home spa. A point of relaxation, and not for everyone. We definitely interview the client. Every once in a while, we'll get another room that really speaks to a client that they want their theater to be, amazing. But master baths is where we like to pull that creativity, get into beautiful layering of materials and texture. And it's a challenge because there's not a lot of furniture in a master bath. And so because we start with the architecture and start with the build part as designers, it's, the master bath in the construction phase is 95% of the space at the end of the project. And so a lot of other spaces, family rooms, libraries, bedrooms, we can come up with a lot of texture and layers in the furnishings. And we can kind of see what we're missing by the time we get to that point. But with master bathrooms, you have to accomplish and kind of check off that design, list in just the construction. And so architecturally, ceilings, light fixtures, plumbing fixtures, layering of tile. I enjoy master bathrooms for that reason.
Well, what's key, if you're designing a good master bathroom, a lot of it is you understanding what the client, how they're going to live, the spa aesthetic, as you mentioned, just that retreat. But it's really important, if that's the case, that you're involved in the beginning. So are you always involved with the architect from the beginning to have an influence on the floor plan, layout, if they want 2 water closets and his and her, right, a steam shower, these elements they may want?
Yeah, that's our ideal client and ideal project is we want to be involved from the moment that it's an idea on a napkin. We allow the architects to do their job, and we want to make sure we're staying in our lane. But we tell our clients, you get us to be your consultant, to be your eyes and ears through that architectural development process with your architect. And we charge the same whether they hire us from the very, very beginning or, yes, we do get hired maybe once plans have already developed. But we charge the same. So the clients who use us from the very beginning benefit the most. They're getting the most value. And that's just our kind of subtle way of saying, hire us early. Or if you didn't and you refer us to your friends, make sure your friends hire us early. Because I was an engineering major for 2 years in college before switching to design. And so that kind of architectural, I don't mind geeking out a little bit, looking at a set of drawings, understanding where our structural points are. Can we move a wall 2 feet? Am I asking too much of the architect? Does this, how do we cohesively work together? And the best projects that I've had is where that true team between designer and architect is established from day one, and it works all the way through. And that's where when you really are pulling the best out of many different professionals, the client wins at the end of that.
I love that you share that the client does win. And that's the perspective I think many of us are trying to change in the industry, and it's happening, right? The clients see that this goes back to you. Alisha, along this point, what has been your most successful project and why?
Our most successful project was a new build in Arcadia neighborhood in Scottsdale, here locally in our backyard. And I think the reason why it was so successful, it was the 3rd project that we've done for this client. And it was trust. it was whatever Alisha says.
Those are always good as a designer, right?
Yes, we love those. But at the end of the whole project, it got photographed 3 times. It was published in Phoenix Home and Garden magazine without us trying. And they even just called me again this week. I mean, this project was finished a few years ago. And she says, yeah, we just got an offer. Our house is not for sale. And we got an offer yesterday for just a ridiculous amount. She's like, we're not going to take it. And they understood from working with us on the first 2 projects, because they were very, very interested in value in their home and resale value. Even though they were designing this 3rd one, they said would be their last, they still kind of have that business. He comes from a business and he was in the industry. So he had that mindset of let's make sure we always have value in this house. And they knew that design sells. And their first 2 projects that they sold, they made more on their house than they ever expected. And the realtor said, it shows well. It's, beautiful. And so by the time we got to project 3, we really got to tap into whatever we wanted. And her only request was just don't give me a white kitchen. And it's very common in that neighborhood.
Yeah,
as you know, there's a little bit of an aesthetic and a look. And I said, no problem. But that allowed us to do black cabinets and partnered with, light tones and crayon edge tiles and a little pattern in just the right places, because we didn't have to really explain much to them. So I would say that's our most successful project and has led to many other projects. And they're pretty good about teaching our future clients to trust us too,
Well,
which is nice.
That's the key, right? I mean, you say successful project comes down to trust. And a lot of it is, as you mentioned, these are projects by the 3rd time, especially when you have architect, designer, builder together and you're working cohesively. And then you have the end goal, right? I look at my history that the best projects are always when the designer's on board with us, the architect's on board, we're working together. And by the time I put a shovel in the ground and we break ground, we have all the selections done. And it's not that we can't make changes, or Alisha says, hey, we want to change this, or this product's out of stock, or the client may see something. That happens on every project. They're custom homes. Even on projects where everything's decided, we'll still have 50 changes, right?
Right.
It's just reality. But having that common starting place where we make those selections before we break ground, it leads to so much success. The project's built quicker. The client's happier, as you mentioned. Right now, we have a project where, fortunately, this can be amazing, where all the furniture is going to be in. So we're going to finish our punch list. The clients can do their punch list. We're going to install the furniture. We're going to photograph it. Then the client moves in and you're done. And this, very few times in my career has it ever been that you can photograph a house before they move in, right? With all the furniture.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we're striving for. But by having that team together, and as we're kind of going through this heavy lifting and building that trust, that's where the client wins, as you mentioned.
Yeah. And we keep talking about the ideal team, meaning professionals, but I tell the client they're on the team too.
Yes.
Because they are such an important piece and they bring something to the table, but it also allows them to kind of take ownership and responsibility to work great with everyone and to communicate. And so we tell them from the get-go, hey, you're on the team, and when I send out emails, it's hi team, and including them on everything. But yes, as professionals, it's great to work together, but we can't do our job without a client that trusts us.
Yeah. And so I love that you mentioned that, because essentially we're married, right? You're married to the client, you're married to the team for 2 years. I mean, these are 1, 2, 3, 4 year processes, they can be, and so they can be exhausting. So emotionally, you want to make sure you all get along and you communicate well, but you said this a few times, Alisha. So ideal client, this is something when you start thinking about marketing and success in business, is understanding your ideal client. Why? What are they? Is there a demographic? Is there an age? Is there a consistency as far as them building projects or being experienced? So in your experience for the ideal client, what has been your ideal client?
Personally, in our business, our ideal client is a couple who wants to build a new house, and they're usually successful professionals, both of them. And they don't have the time, and they're really needing to lean on professionals because of how we do our presentations. It is presentation formatted. We're not dragging them to showrooms. We're not going to take up that much of their time out of their day. And so that's our ideal client. And we've had clients, like you mentioned, one of our local clients had a penthouse in Belize and said, okay, we trust you, let's go. And we've done some lake houses around the country.
I'm sure it was easy getting furniture to Belize too.
Oh
and
my gosh.
Getting construction done.
We now, I feel like, have a degree in international logistics of ferries and boats and barges.
And ports and getting product released into the house,
yes,
to the penthouse.
Total new challenge. But no, professional clients that are successful in their own world and allows us to be professional and successful for them and pass that trust on, that's the ideal client.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned systems. I think that's the most successful thing for any business. I know for me, it wasn't until we had systems here at AFT that I felt that we actually were successful as a builder. And it's not that we're still making mistakes, but we have systems and protocol that's now checking that and we're fixing that to be a better builder. And you're the same way, Alisha, where, the reality is you want successful clients that, it trust you, as you mentioned, that are going to hire you because they can focus on their career and life and whatever they have going on. And they need to hire professional people. And this goes back to something earlier in the conversation you mentioned, is that when we're talking about the cheapest price, well, I know you and I have spoken offline, and typically the cheapest person is someone who's not going to manage the job, right?
Oh.
So the client's managing it. The client's hiring someone to build their house, and yet they're having to micromanage the whole process. That's exactly what we don't want to happen. And so hiring the right people that are going to run the project and lead it and drive that bus, right? That's what you do, Alisha. And that's why the clients trust you. And that's where you have found success with those ideal clients that don't want to micromanage. They want to hire Alisha because I don't have to go to 50 showrooms. She has her systems in place that she makes all the selections, and we can sit down. Yes, make that switch, but you're good to go from your side.
Yeah, we explain to our clients we have a very systematic and organized process for a creative design, which sounds funny, but we, from the very beginning, will give them a presentation schedule. For the next 4 months, they know every single thing that's going to happen, every step, what to expect every time when they walk into our presentation room. It's extremely organized. Homes are difficult, especially when we're getting to the size of homes that we get out here in the desert, is to be able to get through all the designs and all the decisions and keep the client on track, keep us on track as designers. And so before we even start a project and we know they're on board, we've interviewed them, we've done our little kickoff meeting, we set up the entire schedule. Sometimes that lasts 6 months, and we calendar the entire thing out because my team then has checkpoints and to-do lists and, certain things that we need to make sure. Did we talk about this? Have we mentioned the kitchen sink? Have we gone through these aspects? And so systems is key for the projects, the caliber and the size that we're doing. You can't do them without great systems.
And I'll say you've hit your mark every time. I know in the projects we've worked together on pre-construction, the architect has his timeline of certain phases of the design, right? And then after the floor plan and renderings and the elevations are done, and that's gets kicked off to the consultants, engineers, civil and mechanical. That's when you really kick in. But you have that broken out phases where you're like, hey, Brad, what is the date we're submitting for permit? When do you need a design book? And then you're breaking that out and you have your phases and you give that to the client. And I think that's really valuable because for any designer that's going to sit there and break out, here's phase 1, 2, 3, 8, whatever it may be, and you hit those and you're done, it just is a streamlined process. The client understands the expectation, the time commitments you need in design. And then they understand that once Alicia's done, she hands it off to Brad or whatever builder, and now they go do it. And yeah, you're going to be involved, but at least now the heavy lifting's been completed.
Completely. Well, and as a business owner, it's pipeline, it's,
schedule. They're traveling, they're busy. Yeah, they know their commitment to you.
Yeah. Well, and our clients are super busy. So we have also found that presentation schedule is key because it's not like, okay, now we have the kitchen done and designed. When can you meet? Well, gosh, it may take 2 weeks to get everybody's schedule to align. And
then you have dead time, lost time.
Exactly. And so we set from the very beginning, and I tell them, look over this schedule. If some of these dates don't work, we're going to reschedule now on day 1, and then we know on month 4, they're in town, they're going to be there. And so decision makers can be there. A lot of times we ask for, if possible, husband and wife or both partners to be at those meetings. Because when things have to be relayed because someone has to miss it, that gets tough. And sometimes we do, then we end up doing 2 presentations.
Yes. Which is tough. You want to make sure everyone's there, right?
Yeah. So it helps.
So to put you on the spot here, because I understand that you may have some clients that listen to this, and you've designed many different aesthetics. And that's one of the values of Alisha Taylor Interiors, is that you can do any design. And because the reality is there's no ego, right? You're interpreting what the clients want and you're putting that together with your team. And that's the skill set you have. Now, this is your personal house. So what is your aesthetic? If you're designing your own kitchen and house, no limitations, what direction are you going?
Personally, I do love the warm and cozy, something that, I can cook a whole meal in and feel cozy and classic, rooted in classic with all the modern touches, I think would be how I'd explain.
Define that a little bit for anyone listening. If you're saying classic architecture design with some of the modern flair, if you were, amenities.
Yeah. So traditional cabinetry, function, storage, some of those appealing features, but yet maybe a streamlined panel style and a simplistic crown, focusing on massing and that hood design instead of just throwing up some huge classic, hood. Maybe that's where the modern touch comes in, partnered with, some, more classic traditional pieces. So, and keeping it clean. And I think no matter what our client's style is, whether it's soft contemporary or a true traditional, my style comes out. It's that, that classic, it's always going to be rooted in some type of a classic architecture or style or just feeling, even if it is contemporary, let's say, because then the modern touches, it's just how much of those modern touches and how much of that specific style you put in.
It's key. I mean, the reason you say that when you're thinking classic or another word, timeless, right? There are elements to designs, from the East Coast to even California and to Europe, right? That have stood the test of time for hundreds of years. So you could walk in and they still look consistent, right?
Yes.
And you don't want something trendy that's going to say in and out, oh, that was built at this time frame, because that's what was common. And so having to integrate, yes, flares of that classic and timeless design with some modern touches or something that's current is key, so that it retains its values. You mentioned with some of your clients that.
Yeah. And it's real estate value. Very few of our clients, we do ask that question in our kickoff meeting, from a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a flip, so it has to appeal to everyone, to 10 meaning no one could buy this house because it's so custom to you. Where do you want to be?
Because you kind of have to be that way.
Yes.
If they have engraved medallions, just walk through the front door with their last name or something, right?
Exactly. So we ask everyone, and 90% of our clients are totally keeping in mind resale value. And so, yes, they have definite personal requests, but as a designer, I'm constantly making sure that we're adding value to their home and not taking away because of just something they asked for. And, and walking through that and keeping that in check the entire time, because a beautiful design should blow the real estate market water. It should absolutely do better than its neighbor.
So from a personal standpoint, or maybe even for the clients, when you're looking at the flooring, do you prefer a wood product? Wood flooring, tile? Is there something that...
I mean, here in Arizona, we do a lot of engineered wood.
Yep.
So wood flooring... We refuse to do tile looking wood planks. We'll tell our clients why.
This goes back to time frame, right?
Exactly. And some of the softer, soft contemporary homes will require a stone or a beautiful large format porcelain. So some of that is dictated by the architecture of the house. But yeah, our favorite style or our favorite flooring is going to be your wood flooring. It just adds that warmth and that background that we can build a design off of.
So you've had great success as a designer with repeat clients. And I know a lot of your clients have built with you many times, which really speaks to your ability to communicate and walk through the process and the system side. Outside of repeat clients, where are you finding the inquiries and job leads?
I would say builders and architects are our biggest referral base. When you've got a great team, you want to do it again. And we we do the same. And, we pay it back to them in a referral as well, because a builder is everything to getting a successful, beautiful project at the end and carrying our vision through. And so definitely those team members, it's evident that we all want to work together again. And then beyond that, we launched a brand new website. We've been focusing on SEO. I've been kind of geeking out and trying to learn the marketing world and hired a marketing manager in-house. And so we're getting a lot of inquiries from our website. And if they go there, they're getting a little education first. They're seeing, other projects. And then, of course, Instagram, I think, is just a great resource and a great marketing tool for us as designers.
Yeah, SEO is super important. I don't think a lot of us focus enough on Google and, the back end side, whether you're using WordPress or whatever, but how that content, right? And even how YouTube was owned by Google. So any YouTube content you're putting out does speak, and they collaborate together. I noticed, we don't have a huge following on YouTube, but there are clients that somehow see our videos, or they're looking up ICF construction, that video comes up. So that part's important. That, the content creation is important for any company.
Yeah. And we've learned too, we're focusing on trying to do it organically and move up, which takes a lot of time.
It's a lot of time organically.
And blog posts and learning how to write a blog post and how many times you have to say certain words and phrases for the googly bots to pick up on it. And we've hired a local company, actually, a small business, to help us to kind of understand and teach us. And that's been huge. And then in-house, having somebody that is well-versed on SEO. So we're quietly kind of always plugging away at SEO, but it's a long game. It's a
long game, or it's a very expensive game.
Yeah. So we're going with the long game.
Yeah. Yes. I can understand that. I remember when we first started a website and just understanding what the cost would be to have a third party work on the SEO content. It's a lot of money. It's a big investment, right?
Yes.
And you have an inside track too on the marketing side. Your daughter's working, for Modern Luxury, and so there's that correlation. And so for you, you've been fortunate to be published in many different publications. Have you seen the benefit of, not that you're designing to be published, that's not the goal. You're designing for your client, but and those awards or those publications don't separate you as a business, but they do help, right? There's additional press releases and marketing material. And so how have you seen that benefit, just, seeing yourself in these publications and other eyes,
Definitely. Well, I look at it as a resume builder, even though, yes, I have a job. I'm not going out there, with a resume in hand, but in a way, every business has its own resume. And so our clients or potential clients get a kick when they find out we were published. And it's funny because it's not necessarily someone finding us out of the blue from the publication, calling us to hire us. It's a potential client, someone we've been nurturing. It's the builders, it's the architects. It's just building that reputation, kind of building that resume, just another kind of gold star there to be able to show a potential client. And that's where we find value in all those different eyes and those different formats of marketing.
So when you mentioned that you're working with the outside party, is this a public relations firm? Is this someone just helping with SEO?
So their name is Marketers, and they are just strictly SEO.
Okay.
And they really tailor to small businesses. So they have budget-friendly packages. You can write your own blogs. They can write them for you. There's a lot of different options. But we learned through, having my daughter has a marketing degree, taught me a lot, and others, that it's slow and it's methodical, and we didn't have those skills, and so we reached out, and they've been great, and now we're pulling in more marketing in-house. And so we're needing maybe them a little less, but it's because now we are writing blogs and, kind of taking those tools and keys and just keep that ball
So
going.
in-house, you're still doing your own social media though? been outsourcing the blogs and SEO.
Yeah, exactly. So in-house, we do all of our social media. We actually had a gal do all of our posts who is actually out of house per se. She was a design student up at NAU and had her help us, with some of that, and then hired her as a full-time junior designer. She's awesome. So now it's truly in-house. And I hired this year was the switch where I said, okay, we need somebody in-house that has a marketing degree. Outsourcing it is going to get expensive. And I just want that person who actually knows my voice and our culture and our business and our ideal client. So that's been huge, is to pull somebody in-house to help with marketing.
It's so smart as you think about that element. So many companies don't think about the marketing arm. And it's really key because, as you mentioned, some of the biggest influencers out there were started blogs. They're bloggers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that content and keywords and SEO moved them up. And then now they've leveraged that in other parts. But a lot of companies that I network with that are still successful today still blog. People think that blogs are important, but the back end side and the website and that traffic is still speaking online and on the web. And as you mentioned, just having that flavor of this is what, even if you're not doing it yourself, Alisha, but having someone in the house that understands your protocol and how you want to communicate and present your company, to portray that online is really key.
Yeah. And everything does ultimately run through me. We're still very small, and I like to be small and boutique. So that's nice. Like, even though we have a marketing manager in-house, I'm still making sure that last check, that it's our voice, that it's my voice, that it's our style, our aesthetic, our ideal client. We're speaking to the right audience, because it's important being a small business owner, that voice is carried through to every single thing that we do.
So now here's the real complicated part of your business. Design, you have that talent, you have the marketing down, all these things are covered. The staging and the furnishings and lead times and manufacturers. Like, how are you even navigating just the chaos that you're dealing with product supply chain?
Well, I think that's the perfect word for it right now is chaos. Mm-hmm. The only thing we can do is be honest. And we used to be able to navigate lead times and, hey, you're going to get your furniture 10 to 12 weeks and it's going to be great. And maybe there'll be a one or two little items, straggling along. And now we'll get one piece in the first 10 to 12 weeks. And so we've changed our contract, I think, 4 times in the last year.
Right.
Just to add those expectations in our contract from the beginning, and just trying to stay up on it. So it's just communication. But yeah, chaos it's been tough. And I think we've also had builders reach out to us more in this last year than any other year I've been in business of, hey, can you reselect this? Hey, can you redo this? And that's exhausting too, because this is a project that we have not
finished, completed,
the design is done. The book was passed off. We've gone by the job site a few times, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head exactly the manufacturer and the tile and the color and the style number of that bathroom tile, where I could a year ago. And so jumping back into projects, I think, has been a challenge for us. And so we've tried to been cleaning out our library in-house. Like, okay, what is being finicky right now? What is not serving us well? Why are we reselecting all of these? Why are they being discontinued? Why are they stuck on a ship somewhere for 16 weeks?
Right.
And learning what projects we can still spec those products in, because we've got like an AFT team or a great builder that understands that. And then what projects are we working on where we just don't have that flexibility or know-how?
And this is what's really key. You're alluding to this, is that your relationship not only with the client, builder, architect, yeah, that's super important, as we mentioned, but the other element is your relationship with your vendors, right? And your suppliers, to understand what suppliers are servicing my contractor or my client and communicating. And so how do you navigate that? Or should I say, how do you even build those relationships with certain tile and cabinet and countertop companies?
Well, I mean, honestly, they become friends because we rely on them so much. It's, we have tile reps dropping off tile every other day, coming in, keeping us, hey, this is looking like, I know you spec'd this out 6 months ago, but the company discontinued it. So, and that's, most of the time we're getting that info before the builder even reaches out to us. And it's just relationships, and utilizing, once you have a good relationship with a cabinet company or a tile company, is to nurture that relationship, keep it going, and use them, and vice versa, tap into what they can do for you. Yes, I can go down to the tile showroom, but my rep's willing to drop things off.
Right.
And so that's what I say. I tell our clients, oh, it's a whole village who's building your house.
Yeah, it is a village.
You're
just
going
like
to see 3 or 4 professionals, but
there's a lot behind.
There's a lot. A great plumbing rep and a great tile showroom and a fabulous cabinet company. Those are all key to a great new build.
And this is key. I know with you, Alisha, and other designers that are very successful, I can tell you from the builder side is that you have these relationships with the vendors where they understand, hey, Brad, we met with Alisha. We know all the selections. Here's all the tile we're providing. Here's all the plumbing. Here's the appliances, whatever. And as things change or become discontinued or unavailable, they're going with you. You're reselecting. You're working with them direct. We get the update. And so it's really an easy, streamlined process because I'm not having to manage it. You're already doing that, and your vendor is.
And really, it's
because
they do a great,
vendor.
Yeah. And the great vendors are the ones doing all the hard work in that department.
And they're forecasting. They're saying, hey, Brad, when are you going to be ready for this? Alisha has this. And so they're tracking that for us.
Yeah. And we get emails, I get at least weekly emails from a few tile showrooms here in town that, hey, give me tabs on how this project is going. And that is super important for me to respond to, because then I know that gives them permission to go do their job. Oh, you know what? We haven't even broken ground yet. Or here's the builder here, and they start building that team. Because then ultimately, instead of getting that call from a builder that this tile has been discontinued and they need something tomorrow, I'm getting a rep who's keeping eyes and ears to the ground, forecasting what could possibly go wrong and fixing it for us, a lot of times.
And throughout this conversation, I just hear the years of experience, and you've been doing this, Alisha. You have a talented team, systems in line. If you're starting today, or if you're good advice to a young designer who wants to be successful, what would you tell them?
I did the School of Hard Knocks, where kind of went out on my own very, very young and made a lot of mistakes and learned the hard way. I would tell a young designer, especially right out of school, go work for a successful design firm that has those processes and systems in place.
It's a shortcut.
And stay there for a while, learn, because there's so much value in seeing it's not just putting together a pretty design like you did in design school. There's business and clients and psychology. I tell every one of our junior designers, I'm like, oh, you probably should have gotten a psychology degree instead of a design degree, because that is a skill that you're going to have to learn here. And to learn it on someone else's dime, on someone else's clock, and then shoot for a job at the best firm that you can. Really, really learn from the best before either going out on your own or doing that. So that would be my biggest advice to a young designer, is be willing to learn.
I love that. Being willing to learn, attitude is so key, but the psychology and marketing degree are so key.
Things we had to learn, though,
Oh, you don't realize how important psychology and communication is, not only with your clients, but your vendors, as you mentioned, your team, your employees. I mean, you're managing people. That's what we do.
It's a people industry.
And you have to be a good people person to be successful. So what's upcoming and exciting for Alisha Taylor Interiors?
So we just moved into a new space here in Old Town Scottsdale. So we're excited to build that out and really tailor it to what our clients need and what we need in a library and in a design studio. We just launched a new website so that allows us for all the fun SEO tools. And we've got a huge, we've got a lot of projects coming up, a lot of new builds. It's hard for us to be patient.
Especially waiting forever for permit.
Yes. So in the next couple years, all the work that we've been doing this year is,
be able to broadcast it.
Yes. So stay tuned because we've got beautiful hillside with AFT. We've done a job in Belize. We've got some great projects in a new neighborhood out in the East Valley, which is fun for us to really be part of the most, a luxury community out here local. And a huge, great new build project on Exeter, which is kind of the coveted street here in Scottsdale. So
it is.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. So where can our listeners find you?
You can find us at alishataylor.com, ALISHA. And then on Instagram at Alisha Taylor Interiors is our handle.
Well, you've been amazing, Alisha. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Brad.
So thank you all for tuning into the podcast today. And just as a recap, if you check the show notes, they're just going to have all the links for the topics that we discuss. And also one of our favorite features now is the chapters that go through the conversation. So if there's certain topics you want to revisit or listen to, they're outlined by the time that we discuss those. And again, we can't thank you enough for all of your support. Please make sure and download our podcast, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you download your podcast.